My name is Ade Odunsi, Director of the Sahara Group. Welcome to the world of the upstream. In simple terms, that means they're using some magical engineering to be able to identify oil and gas in the ground, to bring it to the surface, and to successfully evacuate that gas and oil to the nearest terminal. Easier said than done. It's been done for over the last 100 years, and we're just carrying on that legacy.
Asharami Energy, which is the upstream of the company. Part of my remit is OML 148, an operating asset, an OML 148, which sits on the west of the Niger Delta. It's actually about 1.5 hours drive, 2 hours drive from Benin. This is an operating asset the company has had for almost a decade and a half, and it contains 4 fields. The Okiozegbe field, which sits in the Ajoki community. It also has Oluegi field, which is slightly north of where we operate. To the west of the assets, you have Tonja and Polegbene.
And also, trying to introduce technology to make it easier for us to do this work. So, for example, the technology in terms of security. We've all heard of some of the bad things that go on in the oil industry, in particular the use of drones. We're currently doing a pilot now using satellites to try to monitor our pipeline, which is also very exciting. We're also trying to deploy a new method now to monitor our pipelines electronically for any breaches, and so on and so on. So it's really a very exciting time.
So OML 148 was awarded to Sahara during the 2007 mini bid round. And it was formerly operated by Shell. This asset is 100% operated by Sahara as we speak. And it is located within the land and swamp terrain. Also, it's within like 3 states in Nigeria: Delta State, Edo State, and Ondo State. So the asset, as I mentioned, was awarded to Sahara in the year 2007. And after that, we evaluated all the data that was handed over to us. And this led to the drilling of 2 appraisal wells within the Oki-Ozengbe area. The Oki-Ozengbe field is a unitized field between OML 148 and OML 111, which is operated by NEPL. So the reservoir straddles both fields, and that's brought about the unitization, which was executed in 2015, and it is now called the Oki-Ozengbe field.
It's an interesting field. It's interesting because from our wellheads, we produce about 6,000 barrels a day. What you'll find when you visit is about 1.5 kilometers from our accommodation, which sits in the flow station. In the flow station itself, the word flow station essentially means we have a pipeline, which contains oil, our crude of it's about 6-inch pipeline. It also contains 4 tanks, 10,000 barrels each, green painted, you'll see them, which is where we store the oil before we evacuate. That's the word, before we evacuate via the pipelines. We also have 3 pumps, 2 small pumps of 6 can pump 6,000 pounds of oil. And we have a larger one which can pump 13,000. It's important to keep this in mind because when we produce the oil from the wellhead, it comes into our flow station where we process the oil. We separate gas from the oil, which we produced, very important, associated gas, wet gas, which is gas associated with oil. So we separate that, and we also separate the water from the oil so that we have pure crude. And this crude is where we process and clean it up and try to remove as much impurities as we can. Then it goes to the tanks. It's allowed to settle, and then we pump via the flow line or via the pipeline. So when you visit, these are the main things you'll find.
In Petroleum and Engineering Department, basically what we do is to make sure that the objective and the vision of the company is achieved. So the first thing that we do is to use mathematical principles, reservoir engineering principles, petroleum engineering principles, to be able to quantify the volume of oil that we have, so that we can plan according to the volume. Then how much of this oil can we produce? Because not all the volume of oil that we have at the subsurface we can produce to the surface. So when we quantify the volume of the oil, so we're going to, there's something we call development plan. We have to look at the best way to develop the oil, to drill the wells and get the oil to the surface. In doing that, so we have to plan for well. How many wells do we need to be able to drain the volumes of the oil that we have at the subsurface? In addition to that, we also do what we call reservoir management. So when we are producing the oil, we have to make sure that we manage the reservoir in such a way that we're able to optimize the production. And that's why we have to avoid, we don't want to produce water at the subsurface. Oil, gas, and water coexist. So we have to make sure that we reduce the volume of water that we produce and we maximize the volume of oil that we produce. In addition to that, we also make sure that the wells that we drill, we don't miss our target. So because that is very, very, very key in the reservoir engineering and petroleum engineering work. We have to make sure that we don't drill a dry hole. We have to make sure that the well that we drill meets the target at the best position, because that's how we can get the best out of it. So petroleum engineering department is the technical arm of the company, where we look at the subsurface activities. We look at the principle of the fluid flows at the subsurface, how it gets to the surface, then from surface to the terminal.
At Asherim Energy, we have a wide range of stakeholders who we have to engage with for us to be able to effectively produce and sell our crude. And one of the most critical stakeholders who we know we have to engage, particularly considering the Nigerian terrain and the oil and gas communities in Nigeria, our host communities. And so focus really is on how we identify our host communities, how we identify the critical stakeholders within these host communities, and how we develop tailor-made engagement strategies for the people we have identified. And the main objective for us is to make sure that we have what we call the social license to operate. The federal government gives us the license to operate the assets, but without the social license to operate from the communities, it's pretty difficult to go in there and do what we want to do. Case in point, what has happened in Ogoni and how they have prevented the previous operator from working there for almost 30 years. That's a demonstration of how important our community stakeholders can be in oil and gas operations. So for us at Asherim Energy, we don't take them for granted. We know the impact they can have on our operations, and we also know the impact of our operations on their environment and their communities, hence the need to probably engage them. And they're engaged in various aspects and for various reasons. We see how we can incorporate them into part of our operations, how we're able to employ people from the host communities to work with us, how we're able to award contracts of certain values to the most technically competent community contractors. And with these things that we do, and they see themselves as stakeholders, as part owners of the business, and then they have the drive to support our business and prevent any community shutdowns whatsoever.
Since we took over being operators of the assets in 2016, there's been a lot of changes, major changes to our operations here in these assets. Basically, we've been able to achieve 3-phase separation as opposed to the 2-phase separation by the former operators. We're not able to separate hydrocarbon from the wells into water, gas, and crude oil.
Our present evacuation plan is through the TFP, which is the Transforcado pipeline to SPDC terminal. Over the years, this evacuation method has become very unreliable, which has resulted in us seeking for alternative options of evacuating our crude products. These options are the barging of our crude.
The crude, after being separated, is actually stored inside crude oil storage tanks, by which they are allowed to settle for some time for degassing and further separation. The crude is pumped from the tank through the 6 inches by 18.5 kilometer export pipeline down to Oredo flow station, after which the crude joins through the several series of pipelines down to Fort Lauderdale terminal.
We set ourselves very stringent indicators on targets and objectives, which are in line with the IOGP, that's the International Oil and Gas Producers Association, so that we are the same as any other operating company upstream around the world. And to that extent, one of the key indicators, if you like, is an LTI, which is a lost time incident. And many companies are judged basically on this very important indicator. And again, to that extent, we've been operating, for example, within our OML 148 block for a number of years now. And we've just achieved a great total of 3 million LTI-free man-hours. And the celebrations are already taking place. This is an idea of what we want to achieve, how we've taken HSE to the next level, and how important we put our standards to HSE so that we operate in a safe, environmentally friendly and a healthy manner so that everybody goes home every night injury-free.
How does HR support Asharami Energy, the upstream business of Sahara Group, in bringing energy to life responsibly? HR's role is very critical. First, it starts with engaging the right talent. And when I say the right talent, I mean employing the best 1% there is in the industry, the best 1% there is in the country. And that is the thrust of HR. And we extend our recruitment strategy to hiring from the community because we believe that we are partners in the business of oil and gas.
And so, to ensure that we have sustainability in our operations would mean a quality management system that assures the integrity of the kind of contractors that provide services for us, the equipment that we procure, where we procure them, and while assuring that these equipment and these processes that we procure from multiple service partners and agencies and manufacturers, is in compliance with all the regulatory requirements that guides the Nigerian petroleum industry space. And that's what we do, and Sahara has been excellent in driving that.
And what do we do to protect all these things? I mean, the assets, the people, and the pipeline. We've deployed 3 different levels of protection for the assets. The use of the GSS, which GSS are known as the government security agencies, the community, which are the owners of the land, and are very vital to the protection of the assets. And then we have internal security personnel that supervises this field, these external stakeholders. And recently, the management has been very grateful to have introduced technology. When I mean technology, use of drone to survey the pipeline, which has helped in recent times to achieve a lot.
What we've been able to do over the past 2-3 years is to implement our enterprise risk management framework across the asset. The objective of this is to be able to proactively identify our risks and then put the right treatment or controls or mitigants, if you like, in place. As you can imagine, in the Niger Delta, in our facility, Okiozingbe, one of our primary risks is an operational risk, which is production downtime. But with the right treatments in place, leveraging technology, managing the stakeholders within the communities and the regulators, we've been able to reduce our risk exposures to as reasonably low as practicable. And then with continuous improvement, which is our watchword as an organization.
Well, of course, Sahara Star, we have an aim in the next few years to hit 250,000, a whopping 50,000. And believe you me, we will do it. So jump on the train and put on your seatbelts, and here we go.